The final out had barely been recorded. The stadium lights were still bright. The grounds crew had not yet touched the infield dirt. Players were still walking off the field, helmets in hand, cleats clicking against the tunnel floor. The game was over. But somewhere across town, in a conference room that never really closes, two front offices were putting the finishing touches on something that had been building for weeks. One phone call. One agreement. One trade that nobody saw coming at exactly the moment nobody expected it. And by the time the Dodgers clubhouse had finished celebrating, by the time the last reporter had filed their final paragraph about the game itself, the real story of the night was already breaking. Mike Trout was a Los Angeles Dodger. The room did not know how to process that sentence. Nobody did. Not the reporters typing it. Not the fans reading it. Not even the players who had spent years watching Trout from the other dugout, across the outfield grass, from the opposite side of a rivalry that had never quite felt like a rivalry because the Dodgers were always winning and the Angels were always watching. But it was real. Every word of it. Here is what happened. Here is the sequence of events that led to one of the most stunning transactions in the history of the Freeway Series rivalry. The Dodgers and Angels had just completed Game 2 of their 3-game series at Dodger Stadium. The Dodgers won 9-2. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was brilliant. The offense exploded for 9 runs in the first inning alone. It was the kind of performance that looks, from the outside, like a team operating at the peak of its powers. But Andrew Friedman was not looking at the scoreboard. He was looking at the calendar. He was looking at an injury list that still had Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell on it. He was looking at a rotation that, despite Yamamoto's excellence, was one bad start away from a crisis it could not easily absorb. And he was looking at Mike Trout. 34 years old. 3 MVP awards. 11 All-Star selections. The kind of career that belongs in a museum and on a ballot for Cooperstown the moment he becomes eligible. And right now, in 2026, quietly having his best season since 2022. Healthy. Fully healthy. Playing center field again. Swinging the bat with the violence and precision that made him the most feared hitter in the American League for nearly a decade. The Angels were sitting 24-40. 10 games back in the AL West. A franchise that came into 2026 with ambitions and left each game a little further from realizing them. The window for contention, the window that had been promised and delayed and promised again for 15 years, was not closing. It had already closed. And everyone in the Angels organization who was honest with themselves knew it. Perry Minasian picked up the phone. The conversation that followed lasted longer than most trade conversations. Because this was not a normal trade. This was the kind of deal that requires executives to sit with the weight of it before agreeing to anything. The kind of deal that gets walked back 3 times before it finally moves forward. In the end, the terms were this. The Dodgers sent 2 players to the Angels, prospects with genuine upside, young pieces the Angels could build around over the next several seasons. In return, Trout would come to Los Angeles on a restructured 4-year deal. The Angels would absorb a portion of the remaining salary. The Dodgers would carry what was left. 2 for 1. Simple on paper. Anything but simple in reality. Spend a moment here. Because the Angels did not make this decision lightly. Mike Trout is not just a player to that franchise. He is the franchise. He has been the franchise for 15 years. He is the face on the billboards, the name on the jerseys flying off the shelves, the reason casual fans in Anaheim had something to point to during the years when the team gave them very little else to celebrate. Trading him was not a baseball decision. It was bigger than that. It was a statement. A public acknowledgement that the era of competing with Mike Trout at the center of your roster was officially, finally, painfully over. That the future lay somewhere else. That the 2 young players coming back, talented as they were, represented a new chapter, not a continuation of the old one. The Angels' press conference was brief. Perry Minasian spoke carefully. His words were measured. But underneath the careful language of a general manager doing his job, there was something heavier. He lowered his eyes for a moment before he answered the first question about Trout. Mike gave everything he had to this organization. Everything. There is no other way to say it than that. He paused. We wish him nothing but success. In everything he does. The room understood what was not being said. 15 years. One playoff appearance. A Hall of Fame career spent on a team that never gave him October. And now, at the end of it, he was going to a team that had been to the World Series in back-to-back years. That contrast did not need to be spoken aloud. Everyone in the room already felt it. He arrived late in the evening. Not through a side entrance or a back corridor. Through the main door. Because that is the kind of player Mike Trout is. He has never needed to make an entrance. His presence does that for him. The clubhouse was still buzzing from the win. Music was playing. Laughter was moving through the room in waves. And then the door opened. And everything slowed down slightly, the way things slow down when something genuinely unexpected walks through the door. Teoscar Hernandez was the first to reach him. A handshake that became a brief embrace. Freddie Freeman followed. Then Mookie Betts. Then a dozen others, one after another, the greetings overlapping, the voices loud and genuine, the kind of welcome that does not need to be performed because it is already real. And then Shohei Ohtani crossed the room. 6 years. They were Angels teammates for 6 seasons. 6 years of sharing a dugout, sharing a batting cage, sharing the bizarre and beautiful experience of being the two best players on a team that never quite became what it should have been. 6 years of shoulder-to-shoulder proximity without ever once standing on the same October field when it mattered. They looked at each other for a moment before either of them said anything. What was said between them has not been fully reported. Players in the room described it differently. Some said it was quiet. Some said there were a few words in Japanese, which Trout had been learning in small fragments during their time in Anaheim. One player nearby, who asked not to be named, described it simply. It looked like two guys who had been waiting a long time to be on the same side. The room got a little louder after that. And the music came back up. And for the first time in the 2026 season, the Dodgers clubhouse felt like something more than a collection of excellent individual players. It felt like something historic was being assembled. Now do the math. Because the math is staggering. Kyle Tucker in right field. 4 years, $240 million. Gold Glove caliber defense. Left-handed power that changes how pitchers approach the middle of this lineup. Teoscar Hernandez in left field. A proven run producer. A postseason performer who has been in this moment before and never flinched. And now, Mike Trout in center field. 3 MVP awards. 11 All-Star appearances. The single most talented position player of his generation, currently in the best health he has been in years, playing for a team with a legitimate chance to win a World Series for the 3rd consecutive time. That is the Dodgers outfield. That is what Dave Roberts gets to write on a lineup card starting immediately. There is no comparison in recent baseball history for what that grouping represents. Not in terms of combined pedigree. Not in terms of combined defensive range. Not in terms of what opposing pitchers will face when they look out from the mound and see those 3 names standing across the grass from them. Roberts was asked about it at his press conference. He did not reach for hyperbole. He never does. We have good players. We try to put the best ones in the field every night. He paused. Just briefly. Tonight we have very good players. He stood at the podium after the clubhouse meeting. After the handshake. After whatever was said between them in those first quiet seconds. A reporter asked him directly, "What does it mean to have Mike Trout as a teammate on a team that can actually win?" Ohtani took a breath. He looked at the table for a moment, the way he does when he is choosing words with care rather than speed. Mike is one of the greatest players I have ever shared a field with. I think everyone knows that. He looked up. But what people don't always see is how much he cares. Not about the numbers. About winning. He has wanted this for a long time. He stopped there. He did not add anything else. He did not need to. Because what Ohtani was describing was not a transaction. It was not a trade deadline acquisition. It was the closing of a loop. Two players who spent 6 seasons beside each other without ever reaching the postseason, now reunited on a roster that has not just reached the postseason but owned it. Trout has had one career playoff appearance. In 2014. He went 1 for 12 in a sweep. That series ended the only October baseball of his prime years. He is 34 now. The window that once felt infinite is now precisely defined. This year. This roster. This October. And for the first time in his career, the pieces around him match the player he has always been. The Angels series ends today. 3 games. The Dodgers have won both games played. They have outscored the Angels 41-5 across all 5 meetings this season. But none of that is the story anymore. The story is about a 3-time MVP standing in a Dodger blue uniform for the first time. The story is about a clubhouse where the air shifted the moment he walked through the door. The story is an outfield that no opposing manager in baseball has a clean answer for. The story is what October looks like now. And somewhere in that clubhouse, in the hours after the trade became official, Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout sat beside each other for the first time, not as former teammates, not as players reunited by nostalgia, but as genuine contenders chasing the same thing. It took 6 years. A trade. A restructured contract. And one phone call was made before the stadium lights went dark. But they are finally on the same side. And baseball is not ready.